Hello everyone, welcome to Archo. This incident was sent from Norway by Soren Halvorsen. Now let me tell you what happened. Let's dive into the story. My name is Soren, and I grew up in a small village in Hedmark County, Norway. Surrounded by endless fields, dense forests, and rivers that reflected the pale northern sun, it seemed like the perfect place for childhood adventures. I had 3 friends who shared my love for the outdoors: Erik Johansson, loud and reckless; Magnus Eikland, quiet, observant, but always curious; and Lars Nygaard, cautious yet loyal. We spent most of our summers exploring the forests, climbing hills, and fishing in the shallow flooded fields that appeared each year when the rains came. Those days seemed endless, the kind of summers where mud under your boots and the smell of wet earth was part of your identity. It was late August, peak of the rainy season. The fields near our village were completely flooded, water stretching across acres. The older villagers always warned us to be careful. One wrong step and the mud could swallow a person, or the current from nearby rivers could sweep you away. We, of course, laughed at these warnings. We weren't children anymore, we thought. We were experienced enough to handle it. That night, we gathered our fishing spears, lanterns, and buckets. The rain had not let up all day, hammering on roofs, running in rivulets along the streets, soaking anyone who dared step outside. Our boots squished into puddles as we made our way to the usual fishing spot near the edge of the marshes. Erik, as always, was talking loudly, trying to convince Magnus to race him across the water. Lars kept muttering about staying cautious, and I walked behind, watching everyone while trying to ignore the growing sense of unease curling in my stomach. Hours passed as we waded deeper into the flooded fields. Water reached our knees, then thighs, the mud sucking at our boots like it wanted to hold us forever. We laughed, shouted, and challenged each other to catch the largest fish. The storm above us seemed endless, the lightning occasionally illuminating the tops of trees and the flooded land in sharp, silvery flashes. Everything was thrilling, exciting, but somewhere deep inside, I felt tension building, subtle, hard to describe, like the land itself was holding its breath. Erik suddenly stopped, pointing into the distance. "Look at that," he shouted. Across the flooded field, a small, pale light flickered in the darkness. It hovered just above the water, moving slightly, almost as if it were leading us somewhere. Magnus squinted through the rain. "That shouldn't be there. There's no one fishing there," he said quietly. Erik grinned. "No one? Then it's a sign. That's where the big fish are waiting. Let's follow it." I hesitated. Lars grabbed my arm, whispering, "Soren, something's not right." But before I could respond, Erik was already moving toward the light, splashing through the water. Magnus hesitated a second, then followed. Lars and I exchanged a glance, then reluctantly went after them. The closer we got, the more the light seemed to drift away, leading us deeper into the flooded field. The water rose to our waists, the mud pulling at us with unexpected strength. Every step was a battle. The first strange thing happened when Magnus tried to spear a fish near the light. The fish seemed ordinary at first, but as it thrashed in the water, its movements felt unnatural, almost deliberate, and its scales reflected the lantern light in odd, sharp patterns. Magnus struck again and again, but it always slipped away, faster than any fish should be able to. The water around us rippled unnaturally, as if something beneath the surface was moving with intelligence. I began to notice other things, shadows that didn't match the trees, shapes moving just at the edge of my vision, and the rain sounded different, heavier, more deliberate, like a drumbeat in rhythm with my racing heart. I told myself it was just the storm, that my mind was imagining things, but the unease kept growing. Then Erik cried out. I turned to see him pointing at the water. Something large was moving in the murky depths, huge and dark, its eyes glinting in the lantern light in a way that made my stomach twist. Magnus rushed, spearing it, and the water erupted with thick, dark blood. The fish, or whatever it was, flopped violently, and the smell hit us immediately, iron strong and metallic. It was nothing like normal fish blood. The water around our legs stained deep red. I remember staring, unable to move. The rain, the storm, everything seemed distant as we all tried to figure out what had just happened. Then, in the silence that followed the flurry of movement, I noticed it, a shape in the distance, just beyond the edge of the flooded field. It was tall, standing near a clump of skeletal trees. I couldn't see it clearly, but something about it made my skin crawl. The feeling wasn't fear of a ghost, it was fear of the unknown, the sudden awareness that we weren't alone, that something was watching, waiting. Eric, as usual, laughed nervously. "It's just someone else fishing, probably a kid like us," he said. But even he didn't sound convinced. Magnus whispered, "We should leave. Now." Lars was pale, staring at the distant figure, and I realized my own hands were trembling around the spear I was holding. We turned to leave. The water pulled at our legs, slowing us, making every step a struggle. That's when it happened. Eric slipped into a deeper section of the water. Magnus lunged to grab him, but the mud and water were too strong. He screamed as he was pulled further away, and before I could react, he disappeared beneath the surface. Panic overtook me. I grabbed Lars, shouted at Magnus, but we could do nothing. The storm roared, the water gurgled around us, and the lights from our lanterns flickered. My heart hammered so violently I could hear it in my ears. Finally, somehow, Lars and I made it back to the edge of the marsh, dragging the spears and buckets, soaked through, mud-covered, trembling. We didn't speak for several minutes, staring at the flooded fields, listening to the rain. Eric. Magnus, our friend, was gone, pulled under by something neither of us could explain. No one else was there. The villagers later told us that parts of that field had deep pockets of water and quicksand-like mud that could swallow a person in seconds, but what we saw, the way the fish moved, the shapes, the light, felt different, intentional somehow. Days passed in a blur. Sleep didn't come easily. Every storm made me shiver, every flash of lightning made me check the corners of my room. Lars and I avoided the flooded fields entirely, never talking about what had happened, except in murmurs that never left the house. The forsaken field became a silent warning in our minds, a reminder that life could shift in a second, and that sometimes, ordinary adventures could turn into near tragedy. I tell this story not because I want to scare anyone with ghosts or legends. I tell it because life itself can be unexpectedly terrifying. Because in the rain, in the mud, in the quiet fields of Norway, I learned that danger can appear where you least expect it. And that even the bravest, strongest, most cautious plans can collapse in the blink of an eye. We survived, but one friend did not. And even years later, when the storms return and the fields flood, I remember that night, every flash of light, every ripple in the water, every shadow that moved unnaturally. And I remember Eric, Magnus, and Lars, and the lesson that curiosity, courage, and carelessness all carry consequences, sometimes permanent ones. Even now, when I tell this story to anyone, I can see them imagining the flooded fields, the heavy rain, and the strange shapes in the darkness. But what they can't feel, what they can't understand, is the way ordinary life can suddenly twist into something terrifying, and how the memory of it never quite leaves you. And that is the story from Norway, sent to you, a reminder that sometimes, you don't need ghosts to feel fear. Sometimes, the world itself is enough.